Okay, it's 12:05 and I think we can get started. Welcome to everyone who I haven't welcomed yet. And thank you so much for joining us. This is our third PlutoLMS webinar. And we are super excited to dive into the topic of employer branding and how that relates to employee retention. I'm Danica from PlutoLMS, and at Pluto, we believe that your people are the most valuable asset of any organization, which is why we strive to empower people and systems through for organizational success through a powerful learning management system that goes beyond a mere LMS as you know it. And with me today is someone who shares this passion for your people, Celeste Sirin from Employer Branding Africa, and we're incredibly excited to have her. She has a list of credentials longer than I could possibly name for you. So I'll ask you, Celeste, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. And could you please just explain to us, a bit of your history and what led you to get involved in employer branding, and what was your journey like?
Thanks, Danica, and hi, everyone. Thank you for welcoming me on the PlutoLMS webinar. I'm delighted to be here to be speaking about a passion that we share. And yes, quite a history, so I'm going to try and make it short and brief to the point. But employer branding, a lot of people just fall into it. I suppose I fell into it to a certain degree, but having been in the recruitment industry for many, many decades, employer branding sort of came to the forefront during that whole sort of era from the 90s almost right through, and became more and more recognizable. And that's what brought me to where I am today. I come from a traditional recruitment background, and having worked for Quest Personnel, I think they still exist, and I built a sub-brand called Quest Connect, which was focused very much around positioning that agency to address the business process outsourcing in the call center arena, and worked my way up into an area management role, and was fortunate to be right at the forefront of the BPO emergence of that sector, which is now a thriving area within South Africa for offshore location for investors that are looking to a profitable location of choice when it comes to outsourcing business processing and call center service offerings. And that's what got me into establishing a gateway it used to be called Call in the Cape, then it basically was renamed to BPESA, Business Processing in South Africa. It was a Section 21 that I established many moons ago, in fact 20 years ago, and it's now a thriving gateway to any investor that's basically coming in and looking to offshore. And there I established Cape Town as a location of choice. So again, back to branding. I found myself at Strategy Recruitment Marketing, where I was employed as a business development and ops director, and eventually took over the organization. There, the focus was very much around recruitment advertising and recruitment marketing, and also response handling. So very much positioning companies as preferred places of work. This is when my curiosity, Danica, really came to the forefront when it came to employer branding. And I thought, why do companies do such a fantastic job with positioning their products and services, but no one really can understand what they are as a place of work? So people were gravitating to them for their product or service, but were clueless when it came to what's the culture, what's the behaviors, what's it like to actually work there. And simultaneously, that's when I built Employer Branding Africa, started studying it. I started really taking a deep dive and became very interested in it. And that was about 10, 11 years ago when I established Employer Branding Africa. Then last year, I thought, hold on a second, it's all very well creating services, but we need to now empower the people to start walking the talk of employer branding. And that's when I established the Employer Branding Learning Academy to create tool enablers and solutions for people to start activating their own employer brands, learning how to become employer brand champions.
Incredible. And I think that's why we feel so lucky knowing that you are on this mission to share this knowledge, and that you have this academy going, that we get to get a little sneak peek into that today. And so I'm excited to, dive into your experience, and have you share some of your valuable insights in terms of how to actually go about why it's so important, and how to go about operationalizing, all of these insights that you've gained, and what are some of the strategies that we can go and take from this webinar and implement. So I'd like to just set the agenda before we move on. So we'll dive into, what is employer branding, and why is it important in the competitive job market today? I think from there, I'd love to explore the concept of the employer value proposition, what that is and why it's important, and then how employer branding and the employer value proposition actually relate to employee retention, which is a real hot topic at the moment. And then from there, some practical strategies on how to actually build a strong employer brand and retain your talent. And then in the we'll end with a question and answer session. So please, to all our guests, do take note of your questions as we progress. Pop them in the chat or jot them down, and we'll be happy to answer those at the end of the session. So let's get started. I can't wait anymore. Could you please, to start us off, help us understand, what is employer branding? What does the concept involve, and why is it so important?
Okay, so I think to try and demystify what employer branding is all about, I always like drawing an analogy between consumer branding and employer branding. Now, people have got different definitions of what an employer brand or employer branding is. Some people call it a talent brand, some people call it a recruitment brand. It's in effect the same thing. But to draw an analogy, if you have to think about your favorite product or about your favorite service, you always go for a brand that is recognizable, that is familiar, that is not a stranger, where you can easily access the unique selling points around your favorite Dorita chips or your sports brand, or maybe even in terms of going online and looking at your service provider as a banking institution. And that is always the best analogy when it comes to what is an employer brand, what's a consumer brand. As in your consumer brand, your employer brand has got a value proposition, which we will obviously talk about a little bit later. But traditionally, or let's say to date, many people in the talent sphere have drawn on the knowledge of a consumer brand in order to try and get an understanding of the place of work. It's becoming that much more imperative and far more calculating now for organizations to start defining their place of work, as opposed to allowing people to just rely on the corporate brand or the consumer brand. So the need to actually unpack that further in order to translate that both externally and internally has become that much more important. The other thing, as employer branding is always construed as an external marketing mission, and many people or many organizations say, we don't need to market our brand, we've got enough people. But at the end of the day, there's also an internal piece that has to happen, which is around embedding what you are as a place of work, because people have got short memories, and the first phone call that they get from a recruiter, they will up and go. If you are not constantly amplifying why they are there and the benefits and the value exchange of what they are receiving in return for their efforts, whether it be the skills or knowledge and experience that they are providing into the organization. So I think I hope I've drawn a good sort of analogy there, Danica.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you. So what I, take from that are kind of two key points. Number one, your employer brand should be something separate from your consumer brand, what you're putting out to the world, which is a very interesting concept. Just thinking about even the brands you have on the screen now, Woolworths, Nike, we all know them, and they definitely piggyback as like great places to work based on being well-established brands. So that's a very interesting distinction that you drew there. And then the second thing is that internal communication to your people, that it doesn't stop. It's not just external in attracting talent, but I think that's where the retention aspect comes in, is also continually communicating that employer brand to your employees. So I think that's probably where the employer value proposition comes in. Could you maybe help us see that kind of link? What is the employer value proposition? Why is that so important? And how does that relate to, what you've mentioned in terms of establishing a employer brand that's different to your consumer brand, and an employer brand that continually is almost tailored for your internal employees?
Okay, I think there's a slide further on, but I'm happy to talk to it, I think after this one, but let's touch on that and we can take a deeper dive in that after this slide. So the value proposition, once again, drawing that same analogy, is really around digging deep and saying, how can I be competitively different to the next talent competitor? Because at the end of the day, you don't want to disappear in the sea of sameness where everyone sounds exactly the same as the next employer. So not necessarily saying because I'm a financial institution, I'll sound the same as another financial institution. It's become that much more calculating in terms of across industry sectors to try and define what your unique selling points are. Back to product and service analogy again, Danica. So digging out and being quite an authentic brand. A lot of people understand benefits. What are the benefits? That's always a good analogy of an EVP, because how am I going to benefit? What's on offer? What is the give and the get? But I won't jump to the next slide yet. We'll talk about that further in depth.
Okay, brilliant. So thank you. Sorry, I was getting
no problem.
So in terms of what's on the screen now, could you talk us through, how your employer brand helps you stand out from the rest? And I think that relates to, specifically now, the day and age we live in, because information on your prospective employers is so widely available. You can just go on the internet and get anything you're looking for. So how does it actually help? How does a strong employer brand help your organization stand out from the rest as a company, a prospective place of work?
Okay, so I think once again, visibility is very, very important. You cannot be a stranger. You can't be under the radar, because there's going to be that much more heavy lifting to do when it comes to actually engaging and finding and competing for talent. Think about it again. The brands that you shop for are your favorite brands. They're recognizable brands, and they keep engaged with you all the time. They're constantly in your face, reminding you of what is happening. It's no different when it comes to an employer brand. A recognizable brand is a brand that is going to not only attract talent, but as I said, engage and keep your people motivated and proud to be working for a reputable organization. So in terms of visibility and recognition, it's inside and out. And the reason I've got this purple cow on here is a fantastic book. It's called The Purple Cow by Seth Godin. And he talks about every cow in a herd is basically the same. And in order to be a standout purple cow, you have to be remarkable. The only way you can be remarkable is to actually fly above the noise and start shaping and informing people about what you stand for from a cultural, behavioral perspective. And to my next point, Annika, is really about building the trust and credibility in this space, because people that don't know you or misinformed or have to go on perceptions, they're not going to trust you as a credible employer brand. And the more you engage and communicate and not be a stranger, the more they are going to be able to make an informed not hiring decision, but a career choice or a career decision. And it increases employee engagement, retention, and advocacy. A proud workforce who is in the know and is being constantly communicated to in terms of their purpose, their belonging as an individual, in terms of the bigger picture towards attaining your mission and your vision, etc., is going to naturally be an advocate, is naturally going to speak proudly of you and want to refer family and friends and good talent to you. So it's in your good interest and your best interest to keep them engaged and hooked. It reduces hiring costs. We talk about the time to hire as well. If you are not known as a brand, an employer brand, your time to hire is going to naturally be a lengthy process. So what are you doing? And that's just one of the key performance indicators. Actually shaping and informing and being an engaging brand is going to help your whole talent acquisition process that much better. It also acts as a brilliant screening filter, because people can actually opt in and opt out on the understanding that your employer brand says one thing and they are another thing. So in terms of value alignment, cultures, the more authentic your employer brand is, the more transparent it is, the more you'll be able to help in terms of repelling the wrong and attracting the right people. And then lastly, it serves as a communicator. It really is able to broadcast and educate if you have put your employer brand narrative together. Once again, both inside, embedding, and externally, in terms of educating and informing the talent market.
Mm. Well, Celeste, I'm incredibly happy you didn't allow me to skip over this slide. I think we're all starting to form a really valuable understanding of how a strong employer brand can be really important and help your organization stand out from the rest. But also very interesting, pertaining to the retention discussion, is also helping your organization attract not only top talent, but the right talent, and retain that right talent as well. And I'm assuming that just serves to like a snowball, enhance that employer brand over time if you have those, like you called them, those advocates in your employees. So that's wonderful. I would like to move now to this concept of the employer value proposition. So could you talk us through what exactly is your employer value proposition? Why is that important? How does it serve organizations?
So there's a lot of hype around one's employer value proposition. All of a sudden, it's triggered a little bit more attention than it normally does. And I think it's because the talent industry or the talent market, whether you are a consumer looking at your future employer or whether you are an employer, looking at positioning yourself and your offering in a good place. As I say, back to in a calculating manner, really looking and understanding how you want to target the different personas and the type of individuals. It's really about how do you dial up and how does your employer value proposition flex. Now, when I say your employer value proposition flexing, it's really about not only having a look at your overarching employer brand and how your overarching employer value proposition speaks to your talent market, but it's also about having a look at how you can take a deeper dive in making it more immediate and more understood for those individuals and tailoring it around those individuals as well. Otherwise, it's going to be a blanket value proposition that those individuals, those employees, current employees don't understand, or it doesn't actually make any sense, or it's not relatable in their immediate world. So I was having a discussion with a company earlier on where we were talking about the relatability. If it is not relatable to you as an employee, you're missing the boat. It needs to be tailored around Danica, for example. What wellness and learning and development is for you is quite different to someone else in the organization. So how you actually tailor that is very important in terms of your value proposition. And it can go further than that as well, in terms of tailoring an EVP around a high demand role, a business entity or a business division within your organization. It could even be the nuances around a region within the globe. So the value proposition that resonates to a company in South Africa might be quite differently received to one in Nigeria or in Zimbabwe. So the flexibility around that. So, I mean, the EVP you can talk about for ages because there's so much benefit around it. And then getting back to really the give and the get. What am I getting in return for what I am giving in terms of knowledge and experience? And at the end of the day, the tangibles are usually the hygiene factors. So what is my salary? Do I get a bonus? Do I get an incentive? Do I get a medical aid? Do I get pension? But what's coming to the forefront more so is the intangibles now, because, people are still working semi-hybrid and remotely, and wellness and health is becoming a key factor, and 4-day weeks are coming into the equation. And, you've got the menopausal woman that also need to be addressed. So me, in my age, in my generation, what are the benefits there? Now, these are all intangibles. They are all intangibles, but they do, in fact, need to be considered in light of the unique selling points when you are identifying the talent you are wanting to retain and the talent you're wanting to attract.
Brilliant. Thank you, Celeste. I think what strikes me from your, detailing of the employer value proposition is how complex of a concept it is.
Yes.
And like you were mentioning, how what a vast kind of spectrum it needs to cover, and that flexibility that needs to be incorporated in the value proposition. So I think the best kind of I think it's safe to say you've begun to win over the skeptimists in the room. Skeptical optimists. I learned that word recently. But what would be helpful is to understand, how does a complex concept like this translate into a real world example? And I know you've done some work with the insurance giant Sanlam. And so I was wondering if you could please talk us through what you did with them, what that process looked like, what were their needs, what were their goals, How did that process work in working with Sanlam, and what were the outcomes of your time with them?
Thank you, Danica. This was a very interesting project, a very interesting case study, and it actually hit us, funny enough, in the busiest time, which was through COVID. And all of this was done virtually, it was done remotely. There was no in-person, it was all done like we are speaking now. And it was very much focused on the fact that the employee workforce, not only within Sanlam, but worldwide, were feeling very vulnerable. Vulnerable in the sense that people were working remotely. And back to the EVP, which I also always compared to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Their needs and their requirements had shifted through COVID. And Sanlam was a little bit concerned about, not concerned, but they wanted to actually ensure that they were giving the best experience to their people, to their workforce. And that's the whole concept around building an employee-centric employer brand. It wasn't about what Sanlam wanted, but it was what their people wanted. But it was quite a complex case study because they basically needed to not have a blanket overview, but address all the multi-generations within the different tenures and the career stages, from people that had just onboarded to people that were retiring. Understanding that the value proposition, i.e. the benefits and the needs and requirements, were quite different from one segment to the next. So they were going through their career paths, for want of a better word, employee experience. And not only that, apart from the fact that we were in the thick of COVID, it was important for Sanlam to address the fact that they were providing a relatable set of benefits that were meeting each cohort's needs throughout the life cycle, understanding that like we in life go through different chapters, they, through their life cycle, are also going through different chapters as well. So it was really to understand and unpack that. So what we did is we acted as an advisory into the executives and the functional heads. And there were different, do they call it, not centers of excellence, but communities of practice almost. Those heads, those communities of practices had to also be on board, to understanding that they had to drive this initiative and this buy-in and this participation from the workforce, because at the end of the day, it was in their best interest to participate in what we did was a huge focus group, 40 virtual focus groups, which were in fact conducted over 5 business units, over generations, over levels and over tenures as well. So we didn't go on a blank canvas because they had done previous employee engagement surveys and they had done focus group discussions. We took that data and we had a look at ensuring that it obviously wasn't too dated, how the business sentiments or the employee sentiments had shifted. And we interrogated that quite a bit. Once we had got that information, it was clear that the different cohorts had different needs through their actual employee life cycles. We had to translate those findings then into actionable workshops. And that's when we came together with the various heads so they could understand how they could apply it in their different business units across the different multi-generations as well. At the same time, we garnered such fantastic testimonials, which always comes to the forefront when it comes to focus group discussions, where we could pass those findings, verbatim testimonials, onto marketing, where they could basically build their narrative and in turn embed it into socializing what Sanlam was doing from an internal perspective to addressing those various cohort stages. The nice thing is that they were able to prioritize quick wins in order to enhance the employee experience, because obviously people were all over the place at that stage. And as I said, collected verbatim testimonials from those cohorts to resonate with the rest of the bunch within Sanlam, and then marketing to build that narrative which could underpin and support the existing EVP pillars. And then this obviously had a knock-on effect in terms of improving the motivation, the engagement, the retention ratios and that, because the workforce appreciated the fact that their values and their well-being was looked after. So quite a mouthful, but it was a fantastic case study. And in fact, we presented on this very case study at World Employer Branding Day, the HR exec and we presented this, to the rest of the globe.
Incredible. I can imagine this. This project must have been very fulfilling. What strikes me is this concept of narrative that you brought up, and how earlier you mentioned, how deep you can really dig when it comes to your employer brand. And it seems to me like there's a really strong kind of storytelling element to it in terms of uncovering the stories of the people who work for you and what it is that they want and need, and making sure that your brand tells that in a way that also aligns with your brand story and the story of your organization and your goals. So that's a very kind of inspiring and relatable idea. So now you've won us over. We all want to know what are some of the strategies for organizations who are looking to build a stronger brand? What would that look like? How can we go about building a stronger brand, tailoring an employee value proposition? What are the things in your experience that have worked and that organizations can start doing?
Okay, great. So it's not really about repeating, but it's really about bringing home once again that many organizations, especially your legacy employer brands, become a little bit complacent when it comes to assuming that candidates want to work for them. And we also cannot underestimate the fact that we are living in such a changing world. I mean, look at our climate at the moment. It's, we have to roll with what's happening. You have to keep your ear to the ground on what's happening with your employees as well as the external talent market. If you are trying to promote and shape and inform around a dated employer brand, it's not going to be relatable. And we often find that it almost loses the depth and it loses the meaning, not only internally, but the competitive edge with trying to promote your place of work it's not going to fly. If there is no relevance, there needs to be relevance. So that's really the first one. And again, it's about tailoring the EVP again to make it relevant, not only at a hierarchical sort of, but also the immediate, what's in it for me. The ongoing internal communication is obviously important as well. If people don't feel that they are part of the bigger mission and vision, they're not gonna really feel their worth, and they need to know that you are investing in them in terms of the growth aspect of your organization as well. So let's take learning and development, since we are in that space. If there is a concern around the fact that the organization is not growing in terms of knowledge base and skills base, then the organization needs to recognize that they need to be investing in their people in terms of career and succession planning and learning and development and upskilling. Otherwise, it's not going to be a win-win situation. Employees are going to feel undervalued, and organizations are going to say, wait a minute, we don't feel equipped to actually be meeting our business objectives. In terms of tailoring your EVP, again, when it comes to learning and development, we're finding that learning and development is a given on any employer value proposition. That pillar has to be present when it comes to one's EVP. But the unpacking of that is very important, and the tailoring of it is very, very important. Because, again, think about it. We are all individuals. Some of us enjoy on-demand training. Some of us prefer mentorship and coaching. Some of us prefer job shadowing, and they like to be moved and mobilized from one section. They're curious. They want to actually be in the organization, but they want to sit alongside someone, and they want to be, they're like a sponge. They want to soak up every division and every role. So we need to not be close to the fact that just in terms of learning and development, you need to tailor that learning and development experience accordingly around the individual's needs. And then where many organizations fall short is the recognition and appreciation and the reward. So when you have accomplished something in your development stage, or if you've been promoted, or if you do something well, or you carry out a cultural behavior or something, don't let it disappear into the woodwork. Make sure, especially from a leadership perspective, make sure that you recognize it, and make sure that there is a reward, or there is appreciation for it, because people want that sense of belonging. They want to know that they impact in the bigger picture. And what's also becoming very important is that with learning and development, there's a strong attachment to the fact that if you're investing in learning and development, it actually helps me with my purpose in the organization, in following my purpose, because now I know that you value and appreciate me. Integrating it into people, processes, and systems. They always say people before processes, because you can have all the most wonderful processes and systems in the world, but if your people have not adopted it and they do not buy into it, I mean, let's talk about a LMS, let's talk about a ATS. If people are not on board and you have not unpacked what their needs are, how can you deliver on that? So that's very essential. And then the leadership commitment is also a strong factor, Danica, because, you can build a fantastic employer brand, but if your leadership or your leaders are not embodying the values and the behaviors and not walking the talk, or actually leading by example and appreciating the immense growth and the learning and the upskilling, then, the people are going to say, well, what road or what journey am I on, and where's my next step? So that guidance and coaching from leadership is important. And then leveraging technology and analytics, another massive gap there where many people, the data insights and the analytics are there. Why are people not capitalizing on that? Because it tells you about the why, but how you use it is really the secret sauce to unlocking how you can improve what's happening within your organization, especially from a developmental and a career and a succession planning perspective.
Wonderful, Celeste. Thank you. We obviously at PlutoLMS, we have a soft spot for obvious reasons for learning and development. And so I appreciate, the emphasis that you've placed in the strategies that you've shared on learning and development. And something particularly interesting for me is that kind of dual benefit that it brings. So in terms of your employer branding, you are reinforcing the employer brand as, a brand that invests in employee development, that invests in their people. But then that investment in turn is actually building the skills that your organization needs to thrive. So it's a double benefit, and your employees feel equipped. They are equipped to perform their roles, and then they feel that you care about them, and their satisfaction is enhanced. And so we know that employee satisfaction, and that sense of belonging and feeling valued enhances retention rates. So that's wonderful. And I'm going to use that as a segue to speak a little bit about PlutoLMS and how the platform can actually, support the implementation of some of these strategies. And I'd love your input here, Celeste. So one of our key features is the ability for our clients to actually customize their branding. So not a single one of our clients' system looks the same. You can add your company logo, your branding, your theming, all those kind of things. You can really tailor the way that your employees experience the system, from how the courses look to them to obviously the information inside and the paths that they take as they go on their learning journeys. And so for me, how this relates to what's been said today is, it enables companies to actually build that strong, recognizable brand in terms of the visual aspect, but then also in terms of, that consistency across platforms, across, your company website, your LMS, your human resources system. They're seeing the same thing. And especially if you're incorporating, it's been so nice seeing some of our clients use that functionality to actually incorporate their values and those kind of things in, what their employees are experiencing of the brand. So if you incorporate those things, you can really reinforce your employer identity and your values, and keep that continuous communication of those values going. Then in addition to that, we have, and this is something you mentioned, in terms of tailoring that employer value proposition, and specifically the learning value proposition, if we can call it that. So there's actually the ability to create tailored learning paths on the platform. So that involves, setting up things for your employees, setting up learning paths that align with their specific career goals. So you can think of it as career tracks, and you have learning paths that align with that, and your employees aren't distracted by the noise, because let's be honest, in today's world, there's so much you can learn, there's so much noise, so you can really kind of narrow that down for them and clean that up for them and give them a really clean experience that gets them where they want to go, and gives them access to developing those skills that they need to continually grow and actually to streamline their growth and their career progression. And so what that does is, again, that developing the skills that your organization actually needs, but also it reinforces, like I was mentioning and like you were mentioning, it reinforces that sense of being valued by the organization, and enhances that employee satisfaction, and the idea that the employer is committed to employee growth.
And can I just intersect there? In fact, the strong learning cultures also see a bigger benefit when it comes to employee retention, because they know that organizations are investing in their career pathing. People want a career path. They don't want to in and out. But then you need to, as an organization, look after them. It also assists when it comes to mobility. And we're talking, there's a huge hype around skills mobility at the moment. And the fact that you can create a far healthier management pipeline as well, in terms of the mobility of skills cross-functionally, not necessarily up, but cross-functionally as well. So your LMS is a good supporting platform for that as well, Danica.
Yes, definitely. Great insight there, Celeste. Then just being cognizant of time, I'll quickly move on. So next we have, you were speaking also about this idea of facilitating ongoing communication and engaging your employees. And I think especially from the Sanlam case study that you shared, that struck me was that diving deep into the experience of your employees. And so what the system offers is kind of a robust suite of communication tools. So there is an online messaging system for instant messaging, and then there are social forums for social discussions within your courses or on the platform. There are email notifications, calendar syncs. So really a kind of variety of ways to stay in touch with your employees. Which has also been really nice to see how clients, use this as a kind of social networking platform for their employees to keep them updated, not only on learning. Some of our clients even, post announcements, sites, company-wide announcements on there, those kind of things. But really the value of these features is, to ensure that your employees remain connected and engaged. You can continually engage with them. Especially with something like the forums or the messaging system on a more instant basis. And you can continue to actually communicate those brand values, or let's say you've decided, a value you really want to double down on is this sense of being invested in your employee well-being. You can actually stay in touch with them, use the platform to operationalize that value as well, by communicating with your employees constantly. And then it also, just the fact that all of these communication features, they come with a mobile app as well. So that extends the experience beyond just the desktop. And I think for me, something really powerful about that is, again, more connection, but it enables a company to position themselves as a really modern and innovative brand as well, in terms of the way they communicate with their employees, in terms of the way they offer learning and development opportunities. Because now you're moving away from that traditional way of training, and you're giving your employees more flexibility in terms of their options of how to learn and how to engage with what you're offering them. And then finally, just on the, leveraging technology and reporting and analytics, we have really nice, robust reporting tools. It's something Pluto is really, really proud of and continuously works hard to improve and be at the forefront of, really. And what's lovely is working with our clients to ensure that their reporting needs are met. And when it comes to this discussion about employee retention and branding, what is really nice is it gives you the ability to measure the impact of your learning and development initiatives on engagement in your organization and on employee retention, and to draw those links and to ensure that you're using those insights to continuously improve and to make data-driven decisions and to improve your ROI and all those kind of things. So what stands out for me from this conversation and from really having collaborated with you, Celeste, is just how our platform, it strikes me every time with these webinars that we do, it's more than a learning management system. You're not just giving your employees a platform to learn, but you're enhancing your employer brand. You're investing in their sense of employee value and satisfaction, and ultimately you're investing in your organization's success in more ways than just upskilling, but in really how your employees experience your brand.
Correct. No, completely resonate.
Brilliant. Thank you. So we have run a little late, but we still do have time for a question and answer session. So I would like to open up the floor. If anyone does have a burning question, please let us know. We're eager to hear from the audience. So you can raise a hand, you can just shout at us, you can pop them in the chat, however you wish. We'll give 5 minutes for that, and then we'll quickly end off and let you guys get back to your Friday. No questions, it seems. Celeste, I would like to give you the floor now to just, you've shared such valuable insights. Could you let us know, where can we find you? Where can we get your help? How can we get in touch?
Thank you. So I've got two sort of specialized organizations. The one is on Employer Branding Africa, which is really around an advisory organization that focuses on helping companies, as with Sanlam, to have a look at certain areas that they might be falling short on or needing a bit of outside expertise or knowledge or resources, and that's Employer Branding Africa. But more importantly is the Employer Branding Africa Learning Academy, which is an academy that I started, as I said, last year. And I'm excited to say, Danica, I managed to secure a venue for Cape Town.
Brilliant.
Yesterday, I went around in the wet weather, managed to secure it. So I'm very excited about a venue for Cape Town that we've now got, and it's a live talent acquisition masterclasses, which was very successful when we ran it in May and June. And I'm going to be rerunning it in the middle of August in Joburg and at the end of August in Cape Town. And then the on-demand online courses are really, again, it's people that don't have the time or they want to sort of have bite-sized chunks of knowledge as and when they can tap into that information, which is all online. It's an online platform. And then the tailored in-house training courses, which I've done virtually and in person, to basically assist organizations to convert the strategic employer brand framework that they might have, and they need to basically double down on now implementing it and making it real and getting their brand advocates to actually operationalize it. And then the Free Thought Leaders Spotlight event is similar to what we've done here, Danica, but it's really about bringing global and African employer branding specialists or HR executives that embody everything and anything around employer branding, which is a very broad topic. It could be anything about presenting your business case, about building an organization with purpose. It could be anything, activation of your employer brand. So having a look at that. And those are 3 webinars that people can actually go onto the Employer Branding Learning Academy, and it's all accessible. So
okay. Brilliant. Thank you, Celeste. And I would love to just encourage the audience. It's been such an insightful hour with you. And I know that from your experience, there's so much more to learn. So please go ahead and access those resources and get in touch with Celeste to help in any of those ways that she's mentioned. We'll be sharing these slides with you, so you will be able to, get your hands on those details that she's shared. Reach out, contact Celeste for employer branding questions, burning things that you need to know, support, help, whatever it may be. Anything learning management system related, anything related to, operationalizing the learning and development side of your employer brand, please feel free to reach out to PlutoLMS. Visit our website, contact me, contact our support team. We are always happy to help. And then also we have a free experience of the platform available. So you can keep your eyes on social media for the links to that, and you can actually get a sneak peek of what PlutoLMS looks like. So yeah, keep your eyes open for that. I'd just like to thank everyone again. Thank you, Celeste, especially for sharing with us. It's really been lovely. And thank you to everyone who's joined. Keep your eyes out for the slides and the recording coming. And have a lovely weekend. Stay warm.
Thanks, Danica. Thanks for the opportunity. Bye, everyone.